Dayaların dayısı.
Abilerin abisi be.
Nasılsın, iyi misin?
Sen de 2 sene önce yine bu sarı koltukta buluştuğumuzda
Anlatacağı konu da şu: düşük maliyetli küçük ekiplerle büyük proje yaratmak.
sen şimdi hangisini savunacaksın onu söyle
Abi
bana.
bugün evet, ben de tabii ki 2007'yi savunacağım.
Sen 2007'yi savundun. Shot fire! Shot fire!
Game Jam, Fall Jam sizin için bir Steam oyunu yayınlamak için temel olabilir.
İnanılmaz büyük bir fırsat yani bu hakikaten.
Artık herhalde PlayStation 6'yı görmeyeceğiz.
Şu anda 9 liraya çıktı. 9,5'a doğru gidiyor.
Gidiyor.
Yani ona da gider.
Ah, kafa rahat. Güzel. Evet.
Focus Entertainment Chief Content Officer Yves Le Yaouanq will talk about a focus point of view. What are we looking for as publishers, and the WWW of publishing for developers, and how to be prepared, pitch when to whom. And I'm inviting him to join us. Hello.
Hello, hi everyone, and thank you for the introduction. So I'm Yves Le Yaouanq from France, Paris. I'm Chief Content Officer at Focus Entertainment, which is a publisher celebrating its 25 years old now. Sorry for the picture, as I don't have a webcam at home, and you probably wouldn't want to see me that early, directly awoken. So as mentioned, I'm going to do a quick presentation on first who I am, what we're doing at Focus, and more generally, what we're looking at for as publishers. So first, a quick presentation of who I am. I started in the video game industry a bit of 25 years ago. And despite not having a webcam, this is me. So at least you're going to see a glimpse. First, I started as an amateur on the very early stages of internet on MUDs, multi-user dungeons, who were the ancestors of MMORPG, massively multiplayer online role-playing games, and it looked like this. So yeah, very early game development. So, but it was fun. It was a collaborative journey with people across the internet starting to make game collaboratively together. Then I switched to a bit to the movie industry, where I founded my production company that's still alive after 22 years now. And I got back step by step on the game industry, first 5% of my time during weekends, holidays, vacation, etc., and then 50% and 100% of my time 20 years ago, and working on MMORPG, which makes sense from transitioning from MUDs to MMORPG. And I worked on games like Rhizome, Still Live, for more than 20 years now, Lord of the Ring Online, Star Trek Online, Champions Online, a lot of online games. Then I joined Ubisoft 11 years ago, where I worked on an MMO game as well, but for a very different audience than, as you can see. So it was an MMORPG for twins and girls playing MMO games with the Imagine brand. Then I worked on the free-to-play portfolio for Ubisoft and PC games, on games like Settlers Online, Anno Online, all the Anno and Settlers brands, Mighty Quest for Epic Loot, etc. And then I helped set up the Game as a Service team at Ubisoft, which transitioned the group to more online PC player-centric games from all Ubisoft portfolios. So I worked on games like Far Cry, For Honor. The game I worked probably the most on was Rainbow Six Siege, then Ghost Recon, The Division, Watch Dogs, Assassin's Creed, etc. And I joined Focus last March as Chief Content Officer. I'm in charge of the acquisition and publishing department to scout and sign new teams and new games. The majority are not announced yet, except just one, like a Dordogne game, who was announced 1 month ago. Yeah, maybe next one will be yours. And a quick presentation on what we're doing at Focus. So we have 3 main avenues in terms of what we're looking for as games, because not all publishers are doing the same genre, the same kind of games. Some are more arcadey, etc. Some are doing mobile. So at Focus, we're doing mainly PC and console games among 3 avenues. The first one is the emotion avenue, where we're looking for games for PC and console again, that allows adventures, unique worlds, unique characters, games that make us think, that make us cry, that make us shiver, yeah, that triggers emotion into players. Second avenue of games we're looking for is innovation, so games providing unique twists with a strong originality that can revisit genres, that can break the rules, break the codes of gameplay, game design. And the third one is exploration avenue. Games that allow total immersion, that allow to explore vivid sensations like thrill, like danger, etc. So these are the three main genres, wider genre that we're looking for, but not per se genre boundaries or genre barriers. So we can look for action adventure games, RPG, strategy, simulation, but everything that's too casual, too arcadey, that's not really for us. So more into the presentation now. The 3Ws of publishing. 3Ws because the first work to be done on how to address, how to get in contact with publishers should come first from you. First question that you're gonna ask yourself is why? Why are you getting in touch with publisher? What is your project? Do you want to build first a studio, or do you want to just build the game? It's not the same avenues, it's not the same strategy in terms of growth, of funding, of who to contact, at which time, which progressive step to take. And if you're looking more for making a game, then you need to ask yourself, why are you making this game? Is that because you're an expert in that game genre, like RPG or casual couch-based game for console or mobile gaming, etc.? Why are you doing this game? Did you digest the references? If you loved a certain specific games, did you digest the references and now you bring something new on the table? Did you study the market and competition, etc.? So first question that you ask yourself before contacting a publisher is why? What is your project? What is your long-term, mid-term, long-term strategy, etc.? The second question is obviously what are your needs? And based on your needs, then who you should contact. Again, related to the first question, if you're starting to build up first a studio, then publishers might not necessarily be the first contact because you're going to need more investors to start building up your studio. While if you're looking more for a game, then publishers might be the right avenue to contact. And again, based on your needs, you should ask yourself, is your game coherent art-wise, gameplay-wise, market context-wise? For example, if you're making an RTS game, now the majority of RTS players have switched to mobile mainly. If you're making a battle royale in 2022, that's still relevant market-wise to make a battle royale. Are there still a crowd? That's relevant, etc. Do you have the expertise for delivering the specific game? If you're making a free-to-play game, do you have monetization, economic design expertise? If you're making an online game, do you have the tech support and the tech know-how regarding infrastructure, network, matchmaking, post-launch support, community handling, etc.? And again, at each step of these questions, you should ask yourself who is the main relevant contact for each of the answers you provide yourself. Do you need a publisher or just funds? If you need more funds, then you're probably going to need first to contact venture capitals, seed funding, series funding versus publishing services that can provide other stuff. So again, yourself asking the first question, and based on these questions, then who you're going to contact. And if you want to contact publishers after having answers to the above questions, then who you should contact. Instead of just spamming a major list of 100 publishers, first do a bit of homework. And if you're making a specific genre of game, specific kind of game, mobile, VR, online free-to-play games, etc., check out first who published similar games and how did it went. Was the publisher effective? Did the games that is similar to your game, how did it perform? Did it win well, etc.? And don't hesitate, even before reaching out, to contact other devs that worked with specific publishers, to check with them how they were handled, are they happy, did they sign other games with a publisher. Generally, that's a good sign. If you see a publisher that published 1, 2, 3, several games from all the different studios, it means that the relationship went well and that the studio signed us for a second and third game, etc. So once you ask yourself and answer to the 3 main questions, why, what, and who, then of course the how is the first step towards making that happen. I'm going to go quickly on this one because this one is in case you're not looking for publisher first and you're more looking for studio funding. Then you have several avenues to get financial support, funding for your studio. The first one is obviously love money. So money getting from friends, from family, from network, but also from players through Kickstarters, different ways to raise money based on the love your network, close and far away with players can support your vision for setting up a studio. Second, already mentioned a bit, equity funding. It can go through fundraising with BSA Air, with IPO, with angel investors, with corporate venture capital, even sometimes with government, depending on each government and region. Like in France, we have BPI, etc. Or you can have equity from the employees who are going to gather around you and who gonna chip in. Debt, obviously, depending on the banking system, through loans, through mortgage, through advances, through state guaranteed loans, for example, government loans, honor loans, even the Europe, Creative Media Europe can do different loans, etc. Rev share, again, another way to do a funding mix, a financial support mix for your studio, where you can have obviously rev share from publishers, but also from different partnerships with affiliations, with indie funds, with distributors, with platform deals, etc. So again, it's really, there's a timeline for that. The love money is probably the first you're going to have because it's your closed network. Then the more you advance, the more it's network that you're going to convince investing in your studio based on having something to share, to present, like a business plan, like a studio already set up, etc. And then having grants like subsidiaries, tax relief, national, regional, or local grants from a specific region. I don't know, like I don't know, all the regions in Turkey, let's say Cappadocia, Istanbul region, etc., that perhaps have different grants from local areas, private grants, of course. And the last one is obviously when you reach closer to having your game set up and ready to meet players, the sales with first early access, or you can have some, depending on some platforms, some monetization like basket test, betas, or sales through working for hire for other studios to get yourself known across the network. You can have exclusivity deals, etc. And on top of that, on top of the pure funding for the studio project, you can benefit. There are other avenues to benefit from, but less in the funding capacity, more in the service capacity. So different other avenues that will help you grow, like incubators, accelerators. In Europe, there are a lot of well-known, like Games Barcelona in Spain, Spielfabrik in France and Germany, Simia, GTR, Global Top Round. So each of these different funding phases need to be properly timed. So again, here a bit of homework to be done from your end on researching exactly at which timing you should reach out to each different contact for this financial support. Grants generally you do during pre-production and production. So when you have something to share already, like a game prototype, tax relief, you can get them up till launch. equity, start way earlier. You can start at pre-production, even before if you're already renowned as a developer, etc. But here it was mostly about how to finance and fund your studio, but then more on the pure publishing side, because publishers obviously they can do game funding or partially game funding or total game funding, but publishing services, it's way more than only doing funding. The first thing a publisher can bring you is content-wise. The publisher very often will be the second pair of eyes, like stepping back a bit on your game project and being the second pair of eyes that can suggest, oh, to tweak, to refine your vision, to change a bit of the content, because you were so close to the project that you didn't have the time to step back and you needed some advice, coaching, consulting from publishers to tweak and even improve the content of your game. And especially if the publisher is within a group, then you can have additional expertise from other studios part of the group. You can ask network for experts, like you can get the service of dedicated narrative designers, of rogue specialists, of Metroidvania experts, depending on your games. If there is monetization, you can get support on your content as well on, as mentioned, basket tests to test your economy, your monetization design, etc. But the first step for a publisher, first service that that the publisher will bring you will be content to help you bring your game not only live to players, but also uphold your game, enhance your game, and make it not only a good game, but a great game. Second, publishing support that you can get from a publisher is production-wise. So obviously ensuring that you reach the time, the budget, the quality of your game that you're aiming for, but also production support on getting better hosting deal, better infrastructure, matchmaking review, anti-cheat, anti-piracy, depending on your game as well, reviewing and helping you setting up a milestone roadmap, generally attached to related payment from publishers, on localization, on quality assurance, on playtest, on getting better engine deals with Epic, Unity, Hacks, Godot, all the different existing engines. Such thing where a publisher can help you is everything regarding deals. So obviously platform deals, first-party contacts with Microsoft, Sony, Nintendo, Epic, Valve, etc. Where you get better deals, you get better visibility, sometimes exclusivity deals, and obviously support on the porting. If you only have mobile or PC expertise, that's where a publisher can help you, bringing your games to additional platforms, Switch, PlayStation, Xbox, etc. And of course, everything deals related, so handling the price management, how to ensure that your game will be properly priced depending on each countries, each stores, which are very different. Entering the Chinese market, which is a lot of very different stuff and expertise required to enter this market, but which is a huge market. Enter the mobile area with deals with Apple Arcade and other stuff and specific partners. The most common and well-known one is marketing support, marketing, PR, community, helping you getting visibility on your game from press releases, interviews, articles, silent reviews that comes before the launch of your game to ensure with dedicated experts like agro consulting, etc., to ensure on top of the playtest, to ensure that yes, your game is ready, quality, content-wise, playability, playtime, etc. Getting previews on your game, helping you setting up teasers and trailers and CGI, which are very costly generally, adjusting alongside with you on the setting up the proper release date. If you're making, let's say, hack and slash game, hack and slash RPG, maybe you wouldn't want to launch facing the next Diablo game. And that's something that is information that publishers can help you with, and finding the best release date, either early access or full launch, etc. And mentioning release, getting a game released is a lot of work, and that's also something where that requires a lot of support from publishing partners, starting from first-party submissions like the TSCs, the release management, ensuring that your game doesn't get rejected through the process, through Sony, through Microsoft, etc. And of course, handling the revenues from different sources, from the different partners, different stores, different countries, etc., and ensuring that you get that you can start enjoying the first revenues from your game. And lastly, very often forgotten, but very important, especially since a few years now, everything live and post-launch support. Maybe once you release your game, if your game is not live and doesn't have online aspects, helping you, publishers will still work on the game for many years. They still will do community management, try to reach out to other players, try to maintain and upkeep the store pages, helping you, sending you and your game to events, to setting up you for visibility during business events, B2B or B2C, talking in front of players, making roundtable and panels, working with you to make eventually like IP extensions and transmedia on your game, like getting in touch with Netflix or with others to make TV series, comic books, merchandise on your game, doing cross promotions with other games. What we did, for example, at Focus on Curse of the Dead God, we made a bundle and cross promotion between Dead Cells and Curse of the Dead God. That's something where the devs from Curse were already switched to other games, and as publishers, we kept and continued working on the game. So a lot of support on top of funding, a lot of different services the publisher can provide to developers. So here it was who you're going to address, at which time, what publishers can provide, and from publisher perspective, a bit of knowledge on what we're checking when we're getting approached by studios and developers on their game. There are three main things we're checking first, which is the first layer of things we're checking, and then we're going to dig deeper on the second aspect we're checking. But the first three things is the relationship between the game, the budget, and the team. And each of these three areas are aligned and are in relationship, etc. Of course, we're checking if the game is good. Of course, we're checking if the budget is coherent and realistic, and if etc. But we're checking also the relationship between all of these three. Yes, the team is great, but can this specific team deliver this specific game? If you have XP only for now as a team on, let's say, hyper-casual mobile game, and the game you're presenting is an open world online AAA RPG game, then the step might be a bit high. So yes, you're a great team, but maybe you're reaching out too far. So that's going to be a concern and a risk for the publisher. Relationship between game and budget, of course, can this game be delivered under this budget and timeline? If you're presenting a game like an MMORPG or a battle royale game for 100k euros budget, then it's going to be a concern for publishers because it's probably not realistic. Or at the opposite, if you're making a 3 hours point and click games and you're asking for 100 million euros, then I think we're going to be very concerned as well on the other side of that. And again, relationship between budget and team. Can this budget and within this time, and can it be delivered by this team? Has a team experience in the chosen engine? Is the milestone roadmap credible? Do they have experience in porting, porting to console, porting to mobile, to Switch, etc.? So this is the first layer we are checking, which is the main obvious. But there's a second layer that is probably one of the most important we're checking as well, is the relationship between value, market, and audience. Value is checking, okay, your game proposal is interesting and it's coherent, but does it bring anything new? to the market, or it's just like another battle royale game, or another RPG game, or another etc. Which value does it bring to the market for the players? Generally, the first three things we're checking in terms of how to consider value bringing is, are you the first offering this kind of game? That's again something very new, and are you the first reaching out? If you take a game like Factorio, for example, which is like a automatization, factory building, etc., which was released quite a few years now by a very small team. Obviously, they didn't have a lot of means, so visually the game, the art direction, it's like, yeah, it's a bit old, very pixely, etc. But they were the first to create this kind of mix between automatization with the fantasy, with a mix between city building, production building, a mix between anno production layers, and etc. They were the first, so the game obviously performed well. Then, are you the best? If you take on the same genre, if you take Satisfactory, which is like basically the same game as Factorio, but with way much more production value, way much more graphics, etc. Different camera perspective. And the third thing is, are you the most innovative? So among the value that we're checking, again, if your game is bringing something new on the table, are you the first bringing that, or are you the best bringing that in terms of value, production value, art direction, etc., or are you the most innovative in breaking the rules and bringing something new on an existing recipe? Market-wise, we're checking if the game is relevant market-wise. I already mentioned earlier on the Battle Royale example. Is it relevant bringing a new Battle Royale game for 2022 or for 2023? Is there still an audience for that? Or an RTS game on Switch, is that relevant market-wise? Again, and the third thing, of course, is the relationship with the audience. You're bringing value. It's relevant market-wise, but did you target it properly, your audience? If you're making a competitive point and click on Switch for China only, then that's like a lot of reduction of your audience. Point and click is already like a very small niche. Switch, it's already part of the niche of the market. So releasing on Switch only doesn't make sense, and there's sufficient audience. And if you're making it for China only, you're reducing even more the audience. So how coherent and your game proposal is towards the targeted audience? Did you make your homework again on who your audience is? And audience generally, you should have a primary audience and a secondary audience. If you're making a hack and slash game, your primary audience will be obviously the Diablo players, Last Epoch, Wolcen, etc. But then checking with the value, what does it bring you on the table on hack and slash expertise? And then who's your secondary audience based on the value proposition you're bringing? Maybe you're adding let's say city building aspect on the hack and slash genre. So your secondary audience would be city building players, which are not necessarily the same as hack and slash. So these three ones are probably the most important ones on top of the classic trilogy of team, game, and budget. Of course, we're checking, again, team, game, and budget relationship, but mostly we're checking value, market, and audience relationship on top of that. And so if you tick all these three boxes and how the relationship is working, then there's the last one, hidden criteria, that every publisher is going to check, but it's the human factor. It's probably the most important one, because it happens that on both sides, sometimes, yes, you have a great game proposal. It makes sense market-wise. They know who their audience is. It brings value on the genre, on the genre. But yeah, publisher-developers relationship will be lasting for years. for a first game, maybe a second game, etc. And sometimes you're working with people and studios for 10 years, for 20 years, depending on how the game successful is. And if on the human touch, you don't see yourself as developers working with that specific people in the from the publisher, maybe it's not worth signing, because you're going to work together for several years. So if there's not this human click, then that might be risky from your perspective as a developer to embark on an adventure for many years with people you don't want to work with. They're serious, they're good publishers, etc. And the same work, obviously, from the opposite side. As publishers, sometimes we just don't see it happening with developers, from the human touch, the vision, or the human factor, etc. But it works also on the other way, meaning sometimes, yes, the game is maybe not for focus. It doesn't fit the genre, it doesn't fit what we're looking for, etc. But we can see the game is great. We can see the team is great. So yes, it's not for us, but this game will need to happen. It really brings something unique. And very often, among publishers, despite being competitors, Oh, sorry, there's some noise on the conference on the background. Very often, between publishers, even if we are competitors, we send ourselves to each other's games and teams that we see, okay, it's not for me, but they're really great. And so we refer to each other games and teams that might not be relevant for us, but that might be a good fit. And yes, it's a competition between publishers, but games and teams that are really worth it, that triggers like this human factor. Even if it's not for us, we're going to fight and do referral and make introduction between different publishers to say it's not for us, but really you should check out this game and the team. And so your tools to get there, once you ask yourself different questions, when you checked if your game as a team, you can deliver that, you can deliver the specific game under this budget, under this timeline. If you're bringing a value, it's relevant market-wise, and you target it to your audience, etc. The main tools to get there is first, obviously, the pitch deck. Just having an idea it's not sufficient. Every publisher will ask for a pitch deck. So it's a PowerPoint or a PDF or whichever format, generally it's PowerPoint, where you can expose and present your game proposal and your studio to publishers. The main thing that needs to be visible within your pitch deck is your USP, so your unique selling point, the core gameplay. What is the gameplay of your game? To which genre does it belong, and what are the pillars of your vision to support that gameplay? Does your game have progression, both internal progression among the main pass, but also meta progression for online games, etc. Everything live related, if it makes sense. Again, the studio, very important to know who you are. What is the playtime, estimated playtime for your game, and how much replayability does it have? The considered price point. Obviously, if your price point should be related to the playtime and the production value. So if you're making a pixel art game with 2 hours of playtime, maybe selling it 60 euros to players wouldn't make sense. So it probably wouldn't be the final price point, because it's a collaboration work between publishers and developers, but that's something that will help us consider that, okay, they did their homework and they started thinking about price point and how relevant it is. They know the market, so the suggested price point is making sense. Which engine and why choosing this engine? Because it's more easy to port on mobile, so that specific engine makes sense. Or does it have a lot of plugins? Then that specific engine makes sense, etc. Which platforms are you aiming at? The ask, obviously, sometimes we see pitch decks where there's a great game proposal, etc., but we there is no mention of whether the studio is asking to publishers. Is that only publishing services, or is that funding as well? So don't forget to make your to have your ask in the pitch deck presentation. Ask can be only publishing services you fully funded, or it can be publishing services, marketing, etc. that we saw already, but also part of the funding, or 100% of the funding. Obviously, 100% of the funding will be way more complicated to get from publishers, especially if you haven't worked together before, and especially if you're a new studio, because it will be, putting 100% of the total budget of a game on a new studio with whom no one has never worked before can probably be a risk. Hence the former slide on the different ways on top of publishers to get funding, love money, equity, deals, etc. What is your production timeline? When are you planning to release the game, and under which circumstances? Like, will there be closed beta, open beta, early access? Will you do soft launch on certain territories, mainly useful for mobile games? And again, you should prove the value market audience proposition. So having benchmark example that will allow you to showcase which game are you referring to, what are your inspiration, and how you digested them. If you're making an RPG game, which kind of RPG will it be? Will it be Skyrim-like? Will it be Divinity or Baldur's Gate-like? Will it be etc.? So generally, it's there's one sentence that can explain your game. Let's say it's punishing shooter with ultra realistic ammunition mechanic and shooting facilities like Escape from Tarkov, or it can be automatization, factory automation like Factorio, or etc. You should have one short sentence that will allow to describe and benchmark example of other existing games to showcase what you're going to take from each of these different games. So prepare the pitch deck, prepare playable, because it's extremely rare. It happens, but it's still rare that publishers will sign a game without any playable. By playable, depending on your game's ambition, it can be very early. It can be like a prototype build with gray boxes, etc., but that would demonstrate the core gameplay proposition. Or depending, if you're making an MMO, of course, 20 minutes prototype probably wouldn't be sufficient. So depending on your game, game specific and genre, the playable state will need to be a bit more advanced or not. But playable is generally something that publishers are asking, again, depending on whether you already released games within the same areas, if you have experience, or if you work together with a publisher. But playable is generally something that's gonna be asked by publishers. More and more now, because there's a gap in the market, funding a prototype is costly. So if you don't have any funding sources, but again, I refer you to the previous slide, if you don't have any funding sources, there are more and more prototype funding sources. Thunderful with Robot Teddy announced one. There's a prototype funding for African game dev that's been announced a few months ago. Prototype funding in France, etc. So it's still a bit new, but more and more it's something that's gonna come. Prototype funding from publishers to help you fund the prototype, and then depending on how convincing you are, how convincing the prototype is, maybe publishers will go further and sign the full game. So it's still new trends, but it's probably going to help developers from the next 5 to 10 years getting their prototype funded. Third thing that's extremely useful, because sometimes you're a developer, especially solo developers, on your end, without any network. One very important thing is be visible and participate to B2B, to B2C events using Meet to Match, for example, attending conferences like Indieway and other conferences, and especially one of the good things that could, trying to take it positively, one of the good things that happened in the last 2 years is that there are more and more online events with free entrance or very low entrance barrier, very low price point. So it's way easier now for developers to attend different business events and meet publishers through Meet to Match platforms or else, instead of just having to travel to GDC, to San Francisco, to E3, which is obviously very costly. And lastly, social and network. Don't isolate yourself and really take the time. It's part of your both training and industry product progression and recognition. Be social, create your own network.
Evet, sosyallik buranın en önemli kısımlarından bir tanesi. Bir network oluşturmanız gerekiyor.
Someone is talking, sorry.
Networkleri olmanız gerekiyor.
Çeviride ses normal dışarıya geliyor. Kanalı değiştirir misiniz? Sorry for the inconvenience. The interpretation had a problem.
Okay, no worries.
You can continue.
Evet, şu an geliyor sanırım çeviri doğru kanalda.
Yeah, so
Hayır, hala normal.
part of Discords, like Bishek's Games Industry Gathering, Indie Game Business, there's probably Discord existing for Turkish game developers. So create your network, get recognized, and don't hesitate, never hesitate to ask questions. There are no silly questions, and every game developer, every publisher in the world started as you. Started with no network, with no knowledge, etc., and asked questions to someone with more expertise. So there's no silly question. Don't hesitate to participate to industry network. Don't hesitate to ask questions. Don't hesitate to ask questions when you can, especially on live events when it's going back, hopefully, or doing business events. Don't hesitate even to reach out to publisher to do an introduction. Maybe if you don't have a pitch deck yet, sometimes, depending on their available times, publishers can spare 10-30 minutes saying, just for introduction, hey, we're a new studio from Ankara, from Turkey, and this is what we're going to do. We're going to specialize in that. We have that kind of expertise. We don't have a pitch deck to present you, but yeah, it was just an introduction. And for the next time, when you get back to that publisher with a pitch deck, they're going to remember you. One last thing regarding the different tools, so pitch deck, playable, participating to events, social, etc. It's still a very crowded market. It's still a very competitive market. So we talk a lot, and there are some public statistics among the percentage of games submitted to publishers and that end up being signed. And basically the same stat among all publishers. It's less than 1% of year-long received pitch that end up being signed. 1% per publisher, meaning sometimes, 99% of what we receive as focus, we're going to say no, but sometimes it's no because it's just not for us, and we're going to refer to another publisher. Sometimes we're going to say no, but just we believe in the team, and we're going to help the studio reach out to the next level, and then next year they're going to be part of the 1% because we will have helped them, and they will have gotten help from the network and else. But yeah, important statistic to keep in mind that it's less than 1% of games that publishers receive that are getting signed. So a lot of work for you to do with starting from the first questions, the 3 W's, what, when, who, why, etc. But the main thing is do a lot of homework, keep yourself constantly informed, subscribe to newsletters like Games Industry Bees, PC Gamer, Simon Caylis, Indie Discovery newsletter, read articles, educate yourself. Don't hesitate to ask questions, watch talks and panels, attend online events, which they are free now, for vast majority of them. And yeah, it's a video game industry, it's a community. So to be part of that community, you need to be part of that community. So to attend events, don't hesitate to reach out and ask questions, etc. Yeah, I think we have a bit of time for questions, but thank you, and I hope it was useful for you.
Thank you for joining us today. We have 3 questions. I'm reading you the first one. Let's say we are an effective team making hyper casual and wanted to try making a AAA or AA game. Any tips for how to gauge time and budget for the project in mind, since you talk about having the right numbers when presenting to publishers?
Yeah, there are a lot of tools available. I don't know if I can share on the discussion, but yeah, there are a lot of tools available to help you validate budget and funding hypotheses. Maybe afterwards I'm gonna share in the chat, but there's a recap thread being done recently on all the different available resources that help you adjusting your budget. Let me just find that. Well, I'm gonna answer. I'm gonna share the link afterwards. But yeah, validate your hypothesis with existing free tools that exist. Don't hesitate to have it reviewed by peers if you have, I don't know, other developers from, if you happen to know other developers from, let's say, Tailwords, from Red Barriers, from different other developers from Turkey. Don't hesitate to reach and say, okay, this is quite a huge jump we're making from hyper casual and to AAA or AA games. Can you spare 5-10 minutes to review? Is that coherent? Is that relevant, etc.? Yeah, but that one thing also to note is that we're not expecting you to be the publisher in the pitch deck. We're expecting you to be coherent, but if you don't have the proper exact number, that's not your job. So it's not really having the ask and the budget in the pitch deck. First of all, some publishers don't ask for the budget in the pitch deck. They just ask for the ask. How much are you asking? And then going to talk budget afterwards, once a bit more advanced in the publishing process and signature process. But yeah, if all your numbers aren't like 100% accurate, it's not necessarily an issue because it's part of the publishing developer relationship to fine-tune these numbers. But what we need to check is that coherent? Again, if you're making an MMO game on all platforms, cross-play online for 100K, that's an issue. But if it's, let's say, 20-30 millions, and in the end, you put 30 millions in your pitch deck, and in the end, it turns out it's going to be 32, 35, it's not an issue on that stage. But from the jump between hyper casual to AAA games, generally, publishers are going to be concerned and ask for in-between games. Maybe a small, quick and dirty project just to prove that you can go from step 1 to step 2, and then step 3 will be AAA, AA games. But yeah.
The second question is, what kind of path can be followed as a developer or publisher for a game that is poorly evaluated by the players?
That's generally an issue, because that's the first thing we're going to check as publishers. We're going to check previously released game and how they were handled and how they were perceived by players. So if you have negative reviews, then yeah, that's going to impact the publisher perception. One thing that's generally very useful is if you have a document acknowledging that, okay, we failed on that previous game for that reason, and that's how we're going to improve the next game. Very generally, it's technical reasons, especially if you're making online games and you have issues on matchmaking, infrastructure, network, etc. Then you're going to get tons of negative reviews just out of technical reasons. So that can be, okay, we fell on that again due to being technically unprepared, but we reaching out to you to be better prepared there, and we did our homework, and we identified where we failed and how we're going to improve, etc. It's better to do a recap on why you failed from player perception and how you're going to improve than just trying to keep it under the rep.
Kerem asks, general advice on how to find publishers out of your company, and would you recommend it?
I'm not sure how to find publishers, how to get in contact with publishers. So it's, so there are, I'm going to share afterwards as well. There are some publishers list that are public with some ways to contact, etc. But again, don't just send to hundreds of publishers. Do your homework first. So there are some publishers list and who to contact, where to contact, etc. Sometimes on their website directly. The most effective way is generally during game events. Getting in touch with publishers for me to match platforms or Pine or etc. and setting up a meeting, or during live events, even better. Because it's obviously not the same relationship when you met the person in front, or even if during a Zoom or Teams call, etc., than just through emails. Emails are probably the less effective way to reach out to a publisher. But if it's the only way you have, then but I'm going to share afterwards 2-3 lists of publishers that are public on how to contact, who to contact, which show they're making, etc.
Okay, we are out of time. Thanks a lot for joining today. Thanks for your presentation.
Thank you. And I'm going to share the different links mentioned in the general chat. Thank you, everyone, and hope it was useful.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.